One Piece is filled with characters of all shapes and sizes, from the smallest creatures to the biggest beasts that even Big Mom can't handle. But first, we have to start with the smallest character in the One Piece world, Princess Moncherie. Coming from a race that are locally considered as fairies, the Tontatas are one of the smallest inhabitants in the world of One Piece. And perhaps one of the smaller Tontatas is Princess Moncherie, which comes up to just 15 centimeters. For reference, that's just about the height of an iPhone. Coming in next, we have another Devil Fruit user that's not only small in size, but also when it comes to bounties. Being the smallest member of the Straw Hat Pirates, Chopper in his base form is only about 90 centimeters tall. While significantly taller than our previous entry, in real life, that's just about as tall as a traffic cone or a kitchen counter. Of course, that's not taking into account Monster Point, which we'll reveal later on. Now, when talking about perhaps one of the luckiest characters in One Piece, we gotta mention the future king of the pirates himself. Luffy being the main character in the series, most people probably have never thought that he's actually fairly tall at around 174 centimeters post-time skip, which is 5'9". That's just talking about his base form, of course. That's not taking into account any of the forms Luffy takes. While Luffy's sizes can be inconsistent, it's always a treat seeing our stretchy hero whip out a giant fist or extend his arms when he fights. Now, a fellow Yonko did not have the same characteristics and has stayed the same size since his introduction. Captain of the red-haired pirates, Shanks, stands at 199 centimeters tall, 6'5". If you're looking at the previous 4 emperors, Shanks definitely pales in comparison to them when it comes to height, as he's a lot closer to normal human beings. So yeah, that doesn't necessarily mean he isn't tall amongst humans. And that's surprising considering our next entry is just taller by a centimeter. So far, we've talked about the characters that are either small or fairly average in size in the world of One Piece. But what about objects? If you're the strongest swordsman in the world, you need to have a weapon that reflects your skill. Dracule Mihawk's sword, Yoru, stands at 200 centimeters and is one of the 12 supreme grade swords. While the length may be a bit inconsistent when wielded, it's clear to see how much it towers over others, especially when it's hanging on Mihawk's coat. Mihawk isn't called the strongest swordsman in the world for no reason. You'd need some serious muscles to be casually waving that thing around after all. And while the size of the sword often reflects how heavy it can potentially be, it's not always the case for everything in the One Piece world. Coming in at 232 centimeters, Zeus's standard size is surely something to behold. For reference, that's 7'7", and Nami's lucky that Zeus is made mostly out of condensed air and water. Despite that, Zeus has shown that he can expand in size if need be. After all, he's been able to carry someone as big as Big Mom around. Zeus is definitely a force of nature, so it's natural to think that someone like him can grow in size and still be fairly large in his normal state. Going back to regular humans though, we come across another imposing figure in One Piece. Being the most wanted man in the world, Monkey D. Dragon stands at a whopping 256 centimeters. It's interesting to think too, considering that roughly translates to Dragon being the first person we've mentioned so far that's more than 8 feet in height. Being the leader of the Revolutionary Army, it's fair to think that someone like Dragon would be intimidating by his presence alone, but coupled with how easily he towers over regular folk, I'd say it just adds to his mysterious and threatening nature. In fact, it just does. But of course, if we're looking at infamous men, we cannot forget about the one who stood at the top of the pirate world. Gol D. Roger, the former king of the pirates, stands at 274 centimeters. Now, there are a lot of things that are fairly tall that can compare to Roger's height. For someone who's traversed the Grand Line without needing devil fruits to help him, it's not shocking. He's the king of the pirates for a reason, and it's appropriate that someone deemed as one of the strongest characters in the show can be physically gifted. And speaking of physically gifted, the first son of the sea, Jinbei, stands at 301 centimeters. It's unsurprising that he's one of the tallest Straw Hats too. Ever since the start of the show, it's been consistently shown that fishmen are tall and strong. And if we're talking about both traits, Jinbei certainly shows both of those on a consistent basis. After all, being a whale shark fish man makes perfect sense if you're someone as big and strong as Jinbei. The Warlords generally have a presence about them, which makes them feared and respected in the pirate world. And perhaps one of the main things about them that really catches people's attention are their sizes. From one former warlord to another, it's no surprise that our next entry is a bit of a big boy himself. Marshall D. Teach was shown to be significantly bigger than pre-time skip Luffy. Standing at 344 centimeters, whenever this dude appears on the screen, he is very often bigger than whoever else he's interacting with. Even back in Impel Down, we got to see how much he towers over Luffy and the rest of the escapees. Just for reference, That's more than 11 feet, and he isn't even the tallest member of his own crew. From one fixture of Shanks' childhood to another, we gotta talk about one of the most impressive swordsmen in the world. Known for his naturally awesome strength, Odin is one of Wano's most important figures, and tales of his physical prowess has allowed him to be one of the country's most powerful fighters. At his peak, he managed to wound Kaido. Like, of course a man standing at 382 centimeters tall would welcome someone like Whitebeard head first and unafraid. People have said that Odin was larger than life, and while they didn't always mean it literally, he has the size to show for it. Moving on from one member of a Yonko's crew to another, it's normal to expect high-caliber pirates to be intimidating, with size being one of the factors of their presence. And while yes, size is important, that's not necessarily the main point of pride for our next example. Known as the second in command of the Big Mom Pirates, Katakuri stands tall over his siblings and is often referred to as the strongest member of Big Mom's crew. And to add insult to injury, he's 509 centimeters. The dude's as tall as two Shanks standing on top of each other. It really makes you wonder if it's the amount of donuts that he eats that do it for him, or if there's something else in him that makes him that tall. Moving on from the Big Mom Pirates, the members of the Beast Pirates are not pushovers either. Being the third in command of the Beast Pirates, Queen is also the third tallest member in the crew. Standing at 530 centimeters, it's no wonder that whenever we see Queen, he makes his underlings look like children. And with a devil fruit that turns him into a brachiosaurus, it's appropriate that one of the top executives of a Yonko crew might be that imposing. And if you thought donuts made you big, red bean soup proves to be a serious contender for that too. Of course, while Queen is the third tallest member of the Beast Pirates, he's a bit smaller compared to our next entry. Being the second in command, only coming next to Kaido, King stands at a whopping 550 centimeters. That is the average height of a giraffe. King has shown that his size translates to fighting prowess, and there's no better way he shows that off than by knocking over the Queen Mama Chanter when the Big Mom Pirates attempted to enter Wano. Dude's called King for a reason, that's all I'm saying. Now, I hope we've established at this point that it's kind of normal for Yonko crews to have very physically intimidating members. After all, they're feared for a reason. But it's not just the crew members that are big. The captains are as well, of course. Known as the strongest man in the world, Whitebeard took on many challengers and has proven that he deserves his title. Of course, being one of the most important figures in the world of One Piece, strength is a key component, as well as his size. Standing at 665 centimeters, Whitebeard has the size and strength to back up such a strong reputation. But I can already hear you. KiraPiece, how tall is 665 centimeters? He's as tall as a shipping container. Not even mentioning his signature Naginata, the Murakumogiri, which is 9 meters long, the same length as a standard-sized bus. And with the way he just throws that thing around, I don't think anyone's challenging him for the title of strongest anytime soon. Anyway, the Yonkos are considered larger-than-life beings, with their dominance being the key factor in their reign over the seas, and while Whitebeard was surely a huge figure, there are two other Yonkos that stand meters taller than him. Having talked about two of his subordinates earlier, Kaido himself in his base form is 850 centimeters tall, 27 feet. And while most people are familiar with his dragon form being as huge as a whole town, it's safe to say that even in his base form, people are right to fear him from sheer size alone. We're talking about a man that had a bounty when he was a kid, understandably called the King of the Beasts. Kaido's presence is largely helped by the fact that he makes everyone around him look way smaller than normal. And while Kaido does that to almost everybody, he can't say he does that to the last Yonko we're gonna talk about. Big Mom, Charlotte Linlin, the tallest Yonko and perhaps the closest we're gonna get to a human being giant-sized. Born to regular-sized humans, it was odd how Linlin grew as a child to the point that she managed to even gain the strength to one-shot the leader of the Giants, Jorl. In adulthood, she managed to grow even bigger to the point that she still treats someone like Kaido as a little kid. For someone with the goal of producing her own race of giants so she can see everyone eye to eye, Linlin truly lives up to her moniker of Big Mom. But that's as far as regular humans go. With how vast the world of One Piece is, there's always bound to be someone bigger, and for our next entry, we're going right back to Fishman Island. Coming in at 11.87 meters, it's a wonder how they got Princess Shirahoshi up Mary Joie for the leveling. At that size, Shirahoshi makes it so that she's actually bigger than the Going Mary, with the Mary being at 11 meters. While she isn't as big as the Sea Kings that she commands, she's certainly one of the largest characters that has ever come close to the Straw Hats. Shirahoshi is one of the biggest sea creatures, and some of the bigger ones we'll show later on, and while the sea has a vast number of sea creatures that would greatly overwhelm pirate ships in size, land creatures are no pushover. crossovers, especially when we're talking about those that come from Elbaf. And there is nothing little about the captain of the Little Pirates, Little Oars Jr. While giants are considered to be one of the largest races in the One Piece world, Little Oars Jr. is considered to be one of the taller ones. At 60 meters tall, there is no argument to be made that he is more than twice the size of other fully grown giants. For reference, that's the height of 5.5 Going Marys stacked on top of each other. We even got to see the size comparisons back in Marineford when he took on fully grown giants at the Marine headquarters. In one instance, it's even shown that one of the giants the Marines had enlisted was only the size of Little Oars Jr.'s arm. If you can carry a Marine battleship on your shoulders and make it look like a toy, there is no question that someone like Little Oars Jr. is perhaps one of the biggest pirate captains in the entire world. But as far as giants are concerned, there's perhaps no one bigger than our next contender. Introduced in the Impel Down arc, San Juan Wolf is one of Blackbeard's 10 titanic captains, and while he's already huge in his base form as a giant, his unknown devil fruit makes it so that he is abnormally large, coming up to 99 meters tall! And considering how much of a pivotal character he is, we may even see more of him in the upcoming fights, which is a harrowing thing to say because he's almost the size of 2,000 Sunnies on top of each other. San Juan Wolf is so huge that upon his escape from Impel Down, he was the only member of the Blackbeard Pirates walking alongside the ship instead of being on it. Dude's so frackin' huge, he eats salt-grilled Sea King. Like, you gotta feel bad for the amount of work the Blackbeard Pirates' cook needs to do just for him. And while the Blackbeard Pirates sure have a lot of firepower with just San Juan Wolf alone, there are larger creatures in One Piece that continue to prove their strength day after day. For instance, one of Luffy's largest sparring partners came in the form of a whale. Laboon was introduced way back at the start of the crew's adventure into the Grand Line, and with a length of 400 meters, we're immediately shown how big the creatures in the Grand Line can get. That's not even mentioning the insides of Laboon having a small island inside of them. We're talking about a whale here. They're huge, and the possibility of their entire body weight crashing onto their sparring buddies? Luffy's a tough guy, man. The larger they are, the harder they fall, and with Laboon, he was certainly trying to topple something large and impossible to penetrate. The Red Line is quite possibly the largest collection of land in the One Piece world with a height of 9,600 meters. And while the Red Line is tall, there's a living being that makes it look small. Coming from the largest living race in One Piece, meet Zunisha. One of the most mysterious characters in the show, Zunisha is large enough and old enough to carry a centuries-old country on its back. And while it's already evident that Zunisha is large enough just based off of its body, its legs are even longer, stretching far below the ocean's depths to, obviously, its bottom. And while Zunisha is mostly passive, we got to see its strength when it one-shotted Jack, one of Kaido's top executives. Goes to show you that if you're the largest confirmed living thing on the whole planet, you can virtually win any fight you get into. However, there are unexplained beings in the One Piece world that make it so that even Zunisha looks little by comparison, if you'd believe it. At 44,000 meters, visitors to the Sky Island are smart to run away at the sight of unknown shadows that size. Considering this was Oda's attempt at using the fear of the unknown, the Shantian warriors' shadow sizes alone have made it so that most attempts at going to Skypiea are thwarted on sight. And while Skypiea has their shadows, there's another mystery that sticks close to another equally eerie island. We've come to realize later on that Thriller Bark is actually a large pirate ship that looks like an island, and there are some mysteries there that remain unsolved. For example, in the Florian Triangle, where we're introduced to Thriller Bark, there's also another unsolved mystery, the Florian Warriors. At 54,000 meters, it's understandable that no one has been brave enough to come close to them to confirm what they really are. Taking into account the Straw Hat ship at the time, the Going Merry, you'd have to stack 4,909 Marys on top of each other to even come close to that type of height. We may never know the mystery of the Florian Warriors, and considering how many terrifying things the world of One Piece has, it might be better to keep out of their way. Now, if you don't want to get found by the Florian Warriors, then click this video right here. Thank you for watching. Have an amazing day.